Hi everybody, Norman Van Aken here with one of my treasure books. This one reaches over to England, London, where this gentleman, Nico Ladenis, was operating his restaurants. Look at that face. That man looks like a tough son of a gun, doesn't he? Tough, proud, maybe arrogant, but a brilliant chef. By his own admission, I came from nowhere. I started with nothing. All I had was arrogance and a burning determination to succeed. Well, 1997, July of 97, I should look that up in my calendar books and see if it's possible I bought this book at the great bookstore of New York City and of America, Kitchen Arts and Letters. Stop by there whenever you're anywhere in New York City if you're into books on food, wine, everything to do with the topics of food and drink. Not just wine, booze of all kinds. Was operating Norman's in Coral Gables, our first restaurant. And maybe it was at Kitchen Arts and Letters because I don't think I was familiar with his work. By going to Kitchen Arts and Letters, talking to the team there, Knock in the olden days, Knock Waxman and then Matt, who's taken over, they would advise me, they knew my taste, but they would advise me of the best books of the era. And so probably. It kind of reminds me of another famous chef, and I'll let you leave it up to your own imagination to see if you could see any resemblance before I jump out with that one, and it doesn't really matter anyway. So this is a first edition, and he dedicates it to his wife, Dinah Jane. In 1995, the Michelin Guide came out, and for the first time it awarded 2 British chefs 3 stars. I would imagine most people could guess that the first British chef to get 3 stars was Marco Pierre White. And that is half true. No, that is true. He was one of the first. The first along with Nico. They both were awarded the 3 stars in the same year. I bought this book, and like many books, especially during this era of really ramping up my education in terms of the global cuisine, the best restaurants in the world, I poured myself into it, the stories behind it, as well, of course, the recipes. It is a mistake for chefs or people who are seriously interested in cuisine to gloss over the introduction. You learn so much about the mental, spiritual approach of the person that wrote the book. He was famous for being tough on his customers as well as his staff. As a matter of fact, and those of you that are going to read my website entry will know that he had a famous saying which went like this: the customers are not always right. I have a dear friend who used that statement very similarly. Guy that operated out of Chicago. I bet you know his name too. So I'm getting into this book, and I came across a recipe that really interested me. Here it is, this crispy salmon with a spicy oriental sauce. Like many chefs from Europe, the fascination for the cuisine of Asia was really reaching these countries as well. I loved the picture of the salmon. I loved the idea of the spicy oriental sauce. But this is what really got me here as far as his philosophy and his attitude. He says, the only time I really like to eat Chinese food or Japanese food for that matter is in a Chinese or Japanese restaurant. I put this dish on my menu as an experiment, and before long it was by far the most popular first course. At times, the dining room at Chez Nico at 90 Park Lane smelled overwhelmingly of Oriental cooking, and I felt extremely uneasy. I was like, whoa. I mean, you loved the dish enough to make the dish. This is a contrary sort of a mindset to me. But I'd already fallen in love with so much of what he was doing that I felt like I needed to get a deeper answer than what was coming out in the header of this particular recipe. And so I wrote him. I wrote Nico Ladenis, and I'm sorry if I say their name incorrectly because I've never heard it pronounced, although I could have gone online to learn that one, but I will. Nico, I thought he needed a letter from me asking about this. And so in my letter, I also had put that letter in a package with my third book that had come out in 1997, New World Cuisine, and sent it to the 3-star Michelin chef. And so I got this letter. This letter came from West London on January 9th, 1998. So it was probably within 2 or 3 weeks of me having sent my book to him. I was fascinated. It came to me at the restaurant. I opened it up, and here was the letter. Beautiful stationery. The restaurant's stationery, Chez Nico. Dear Mr. Van Aken, Nico has asked me to thank you very much for sending him a copy of your book. He will be reading it with pleasure. We wish you a very happy and prosperous 1998. Yours truly, Dinah Jane Ladenis. That's who he dedicated this book to, because Dinah Jane was his wife and business partner. And this really is what the main thrust of this particular treasure book is about the book, but it's also about reaching out to people and what the heck, just seeing what was going through their minds. He did not explain it in a letter, but that's okay. They reached back out. They're very sweet, very kind, and they took the time to write a nice letter of thanks. And so I appreciate that. If you're curious, Nico did pass away at the age of 89, I believe. He also, like Marco Pierre White, regarding Michelin, did something extraordinary. They both turned back their 3-star standing in 1999, 4 years after having held it, for different reasons. I'm not sure what Marco's were, but I bet I could find out. But poor Nico, his was due to the fact that he was ill with a form of cancer, and he felt that he no longer could perform at the Michelin's 3-star level, and so he felt that it was unfair for him to retain the stars, which is a very noble way to approach something. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, beautiful food, beautiful photography, and a very interesting man. He was born, by the way, in Tanganyika, in Africa, that is, and the family moved over to the United States for a couple years, where the father and maybe his uncles operated a restaurant in Kansas City, of all places. Must have been a very strange interlude. But then he returned to London to go to school, which he went to for finance. He had never been a journeyman chef. He had never come up through the ranks of other person's restaurants. The closest thing that he did, and this really isn't close, but he studied a famous gastronomy book published in England or France, but he also got an introduction to the great chef Roger Verger, who I've also had the pleasure of getting to know and cook with. And Verger invited him to Moulin de Mougins, and Nico spent an extraordinary, by his own words, extraordinary 2 or 3 weeks there, and that really propelled him forth to go after the great glory that he could go after, and he attained it. So this was this was a story I wanted to share with you. I hope that you enjoy it. And I think more people should know who this guy was and what his contributions to cuisine are. That's one of the main reasons I do the Treasure Book series, is to shed some light on the people who have led the way for all of us and still can shed light for those who are coming up young and eager. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, a great night, whatever it is to you. Bye-bye.